Hello, thank you everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm Rabina Taliaferro, Assistant Director of Education and Outreach at the Billion Oyster Project. We are here today with our flagship school, the New York Harbor School, a career and technical education school on Governor's Islands, focused on marine science and technology. So this is our second installment of our 7-part near-peer career webinar series, introducing middle and high school students to New York Harbor School alumni and industry professionals in the marine science and tech fields. Students will have the opportunity to learn from a diverse group of individuals who are currently studying, exploring, and working in fields related to the career and technical education programs of New York Harbor School. We would like to give a special thank you to our funder, the National Science Foundation, in addition to our partners, Pace University, New York City Department of Education, and of course, New York Harbor School. Just some quick housekeeping. Please use your Q&A at the bottom of your screen for questions. Also, we would like you to participate in some NSF research. The survey link will be in the chat. The focus is on STEM careers. So you can find the link in the chat as well as on the Eventbrite page. Today's webinar is focused on marine biology. So we have a great panel of current and future scientists here today. Our panel will be moderated by Avery Benz. Avery is currently a senior at New York Harbor School studying vessel operations. She is a member of the National Honor Society, and upon graduation, she plans to attend SUNY Maritime and join the Coast Guard. Without further ado, please welcome Avery Benz.
Welcome all, and thank you for taking the time out of your schedule to join us today. My name is Avery Benz, and I am a senior in the Vessel Operations Program of New York Harbor School. Today, we're going to be meeting with the panelists that undergo a career in the marine biology field, as well as someone who is also a Harbor School alumni. Throughout this meeting, we will be discussing the different pathways that our panelists took to get to where they are today. Fulfilling a career goal such as these never comes without difficulties. And I, for one, am very excited to hear about what our panelists had to do to overcome the challenges and be as successful as they are now. The names of our panelists are Emily Gardner, fish biologist at Southwest Fisheries Science Center, a part of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, Jasmine Graham, CEO of Minorities in Shark Sciences, Amanda Timmerman, technician at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, and Melanie Shaw Smith, New York Harbor School alumni, marine biology class of 2017. Unfortunately, one of our panelists, Melissa Christina Marquez, founder of the Fins United Initiative, had a family emergency and is not able to join us this morning. We're going to continue by asking each panelist to tell us a little bit about themselves and their jobs. Panelists, I ask you to keep your cameras off when you're not talking. Thank you. Emily Gardner, will you please do us the honor of turning on your camera and giving a brief description of your background and what you do for a living?
Hello, everyone. My name is Emily Gardner, and as Avery just said, I'm a fish biologist for NOAA at Southwest Fisheries Science Center. My current job is part-time in the ichthyoplankton or the larval lab and the ship operations group. So part of my time is spent sorting plankton samples under a microscope in a lab, picking out, identifying, and counting all of the fish larvae and fish eggs that are in there. And then the other part of my time is spent going out to sea to collect these plankton samples, and also sometimes going out to collect adult fish samples, measuring them, weighing them, determining if they're male or female and how sexually mature they are, and also removing their otoliths, which are their ear bones. Before doing that, I volunteered for the Antarctic division at NOAA, and I was lucky enough to go out on an Antarctic research cruise in 2012. It was the first job I had out of college, so it was like a surreal experience for me, and I loved every second of it. And then I briefly volunteered for the Antarctic division after the cruise because I was still looking for work. And then before that, I got my bachelor's degree in marine science and environmental studies from the University of San Diego. I knew I wanted to do marine science for as long as I can remember, so I just needed, I know I needed to find a school that offered a marine science background, but you don't need to do that. So moving forward, I plan to continue working at NOAA and researching all of the larval fish that are found in the California current and trying to figure out what their population projections are and comparing them to the past. That's about it. Thank you.
No, thank you very, very much for your description. You may turn off your camera. Up next is Jasmine Graham. Will you please turn on your camera and give the audience a brief description of your background and what you do?
Hi, my name is Jasmine Graham, and I'm a shark biologist. I study sharks and rays. I look at their ecology and evolution, and right now I'm studying the small-toothed sawfish, which is a critically endangered ray species we have here in Florida. My background, I went to college at the College of Charleston in South Carolina and did my bachelor's degrees in marine biology and Spanish. And then I went on to do my master's degree at Florida State University. And after that, I came to work here at Mote Marine Laboratory and Aquarium in Sarasota, Florida, as the project coordinator for a diversity and inclusion program called Marseille Lace. And also this past year, I founded, along with 3 others, an organization called Minorities in Shark Sciences. And I'm currently serving as the president and CEO of that organization, which is focused on supporting women of color interested in shark science. And that's it.
Thank you for that. Very inspiring. Up next, we have Amanda Timmerman. Will you please turn on your camera and tell us a little bit about yourself and your work?
Hi, I'm Amanda. I got my bachelor's at the University of Hawaii in global environmental science. And then I did my master's there as well in oceanography. And then I got my PhD at University of Victoria in Canada, which I was up there for 5 years. Currently, I'm working at Scripps Institution of Oceanography. I'm working on a particular project called CalCoffee, which stands for the California Cooperative Oceanic Fisheries Investigation. Emily also goes out on these cruises. So we go out 4 times a year to measure different parameters in the ocean to see how they're changing over time. It actually started in 1949, and we've continuously been sampling this, all these stations since then. So it's a very good time series to see how things are changing. We measure things like how salty the water is, the temperature. We also measure how much oxygen is in the water. And then we also do a whole suite of fish nets for larval fish and other plankton, which Emily is primarily responsible for. The NOAA side is responsible for that. Through my education, I've been able to go to 4 oceans for research cruises. So I've been to the Arctic, the Antarctic, the Atlantic, and then the Pacific. The only one I haven't done is the Indian Ocean. So we can really travel a lot through school. That's pretty much it.
That sounds amazing. Thank you so much. May you please turn off your camera. And last but not least, we have Melanie Shaw-Smith. Will you please briefly tell us about your background and your career path?
Hi, my name is Melanie. I am a senior at Stony Brook University. I'm studying environmental studies, and I've had a few different kinds of internships throughout my education career. So at the New York Harbor School, in the Marine Biology Research Program, I led a 3-year baseline study of the East and Harlem rivers. And I, managed 30 high school students as a senior myself. We're studying, as other people mentioned, the water quality, biodiversity, pH, temperature, dissolved oxygen. And since then, I've had some internships at Stony Brook University as well. So I worked as an exhibit interpreter at the New York Aquarium in the new shark exhibit that just opened a few years ago. I also worked as a FinPrint research intern. So I was doing biodiversity measurements of different species in tropical waters. I was doing that actually remotely on a camera that they sent down to the bottom. And since then, I've also been currently, I'm working as an interactive media assistant for the Storm Surge Working Group. So right now I'm actually learning about oceanography and Superstorm Sandy is one of our focuses, and protecting New York City from another storm like that. So I'm the media intern working on advocating for environmental protections and just increasing outreach overall for environmental reasons. So that's what I'm working on now, and I'm hoping to graduate in May 2021 with a Bachelor in Environmental Science Studies. And we'll see where I go from there. I mean, I'm keeping my options open and still learning, like a lot of you are, about the different opportunities that are available in marine science.
Thank you for your description. And now I'm going to ask all the panelists to turn on their videos as we continue on with the discussion portion of our presentation. First question we have is for Melanie. As a student still working up to their career, what inspired you to join this field of work?
So I think that's a great question. When I was a kid, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, not far from Harbor School. And my uncle actually has a fishing boat. So I was out with him all the time on the water, fishing, learning about the wildlife, and really developed an appreciation for it at a young age. And I understood that it was important to protect wildlife, protect our environment, especially as the climate crisis, is becoming very important. And so I saw an urgency to address the climate crisis, and I saw how few people actually believed it was an issue, which, shocked me as a kid. And now, I mean, I'm still, kind of fighting that. So I think that's for me really important, just making people educated and have that same passion that I have for marine science. And yeah, that's how I got into it. I mean, it started when I was young, and I'm still here, 21, trying to fulfill that passion of mine.
A follow-up question. Has there ever been anything that you felt was too difficult to handle in your path? Was there any reason you might have thought maybe this was not something that you wanted to do?
So that's a great question too. I mean, I came to the Harbor School. I mean, you enter high school at 14. So that's pretty young. And I don't think I realized how intense marine science was. And when I entered the marine biology research program with Mauricio Gonzalez, the research advisor, he really put us into the forefront of marine science research. And I don't think I was expecting how intense it would be. And so, getting up there at 15 years old, presenting to large groups of people and, educating people on it. I mean, that was a big challenge for me. I mean, growing up and then, having to be thrown a lot of confidence. I mean, I really had to build myself up into a professional person when maybe I didn't feel like that when I was a teenager. So that was a big challenge for me. But by the end of, high school and when I was ready to graduate, I really felt prepared to really face any kind of situation. I mean, he prepared us with a lot of transferable skills, presenting, communication, writing. I mean, going in, you don't feel as confident, but when I left, yeah, I mean, I was ready to take on anything. I really think he prepared us for the real world. I mean, his motto is, we don't play science, we do science. So yeah, I mean, he really set us up to be prepared for real science in the real world and tackling a lot of those challenges. So now I don't think there's any challenge that I'm afraid of. But just using those skills and knowing when to approach a situation, I think that's what he set us up for.
That was great, thank you. Next question is directed to all the panelists that want to answer. What education do you need to be able to do what you do professionally?
I'll start by answering it. As you can tell through all of us, we're all in different stages of our career and have different educational backgrounds. I personally only have a bachelor's degree in marine science, biology or another science would have done. But for a lot of marine science jobs, you only need a bachelor's degree. So a lot of like the technician positions, like laboratory, like field work, you only need a bachelor's degree. There are some, if you want to go above that, you might need a master's or a PhD. But I think it's important to know that you don't need one. It might be helpful in getting a lot of other jobs, and especially the higher up jobs, especially if you want to be a manager or be a PI on a project or something, then you most likely are going to need a master's or a PhD. But this is what I tell a lot of high school students that come in and volunteer at NOAA. Try to work backwards. And so try to think about what you want to do, like what your end goal is, and then work backwards to see what kind of jobs or volunteer work I need to do to get that job, or what kind of education, or like, what do I need to do to get there? And there's not always one answer for it. Like one answer might be bachelor's degree, but then years of experience to get there, or it may be going straight from bachelor's to master's to PhD. So I think it really depends on what kind of job that you're looking for and aiming for. That's my opinion anyways.
I'll also answer that. So that's really good advice that Emily has. I did something similar to that, where I went on Indeed and looked at jobs and looked at the qualifications that they had, and basically determined how much education the majority of the jobs that I was interested in were requiring. So I have a master's degree. And the reason why I chose to do a master's degree is because I was interested in, like Emily said, going to that next level of kind of being more involved in the scientific questions that are being asked and things like that, versus being, on the technician side of things, where you're carrying out projects and you don't necessarily have as much input into what the project is. I wanted to have a little bit more input, but the reason I didn't go get a PhD is because I didn't want it to be all on me. So when you get a PhD, you're in charge, and then you're what we call principal investigators, and you make all the decisions. So I just wanted to make some of the decisions, but not have the stress of everything on me. So master's degree was the right place for me to stop my education, because I didn't want to be in charge, but I did want to have some say and be included in grants and projects and things like that without having the weight of an entire lab on me. So that's why I did a master's degree.
Okay, thank you. The next question is directed towards Amanda. What is something that you're looking forward to doing or researching in your job?
I love going to sea. I think even having a PhD, you're still able to go out there. Maybe not as a PI, they might not go out as often, but I really like going to sea. Spending time on the water I always look forward to that. I think it's like a special community because you live and work with the same group of people. So it's really, they become sort of like your family, because we work 12-hour shifts. So we, at any time of the day, someone will be awake and you can talk to them and hang out. And I don't know, I really I look forward to going to sea. And then I also really like writing papers, doing research and then figuring out what it all means. So we spend all this time, sometimes, I don't know, weeks at sea. The longest one I did was 6 weeks. And then you get to come back onto land and figure out what it all meant. So I really enjoy understanding the story when we're out there.
A follow-up question. What is the most favorite thing that you have researched during your job?
My
Do you
favorite?
know?
I really like what I did from one of my chapters in my PhD. So I went on a cruise called Lion P. It's in the Northeast Pacific, so off of the coast of Washington. And I came up with a new idea of what could be happening out there. So there's phytoplankton, which are plant-like organisms in the ocean, and they're not homogeneous. So they're variable offshore. And I have an idea of what is happening out there. I also really enjoy looking at the organisms that come out of the nets. Some of the pictures I just showed were like the pyrosomes, which are really long and skinny, and those didn't used to be around as frequently. So it's interesting to see how things are changing as well.
Okay, thank you. This is directed to all the panelists. Have you found anything ever strange or maybe memorable while doing your jobs?
I can answer that first. So this actually happened in harbor school. We go out sampling, I would say once a month, and we would go collect different kinds of samples on the East River. So aside from water quality, we'd also be monitoring the mud at the bottom of the river. And so you have this grab, this Ekman grab. It's like a claw thing that goes down and grabs mud up. And one day it grabbed something and we didn't know what it was because it clearly wasn't mud. It was too heavy to be mud. And so all of these students are pulling at this one small Ekman grab. And what comes up is a police barricade. I mean, those metal grates on the street, like a really big one. And we were all shocked. I mean, we did not expect to be pulling up over 100 pounds with like 10 students, like tug of war with the river, basically. And, I think that opened our eyes to really how polluted the water can be, not just toxic chemicals, not just your regular plastic bag. I mean, people are throwing crazy things in the river. And so I think that really shocked us and showed us, what is in your waters. I mean, so unimaginable things. So that was something crazy we found.
Would anyone else like to tell us about their experience?
I'll go. I think one of the first cruises that I went on in the California Current, it wasn't a cow coffee cruise, one of the cruises that Amanda was talking about. It was a summer cruise. It goes the whole West Coast, so even up in Canada all the way down to San Diego. So we get a large range of habitat that we're going through. And I've always heard of these creatures, the ocean sunfish or the mola mola. They're the ones that kind of like come up to the surface and they look like big pancakes just like floating in the water. But I'd never seen one in real life. And we happened to pull one up in our big trawl net. So we're like fishing for adult fish. We're trying to get schools of sardine and anchovy and Pacific mackerel. And so that's what I'm expecting to catch. And then we get this sunfish that's probably like 4 feet in diameter. And just seeing one in person was just really fun, because when you think of a fish, or at least when I think of a fish or thought of a fish before I started my job, like you would think of a tuna or like a mackerel, but these fish, they're just big circles. They're very flat. They have very interesting faces and their fins aren't positioned in a way that you would think of a fish fins. And so it was just really interesting because I wasn't expecting that we were going to catch this. And it's just a very strange looking fish, as like normal fish are, like how they look and how they go. So now we don't catch them all that often and we release them when we do catch them. But it's just really fun to see what the ocean is going to throw at you. Like it's still like a mystical place, in my opinion. We're still learning so much about it. There's still so much we don't know. And just catching this strange looking fish was really memorable for me, and I won't forget it.
Thank you.
I would say,
you can continue. I'm so sorry.
I was just going to say that it was strange when I went to the Arctic for the first time. It's so desolate up there because you go so far north that there aren't like trees or really much vegetation. So it really feels like, I don't know, to me, it felt like I was on the moon. But it was really cool because there's a lot of northern communities. I was in Canada, northern Canada, past the Arctic Circle, and the northern communities up there are so vibrant, and they're so interested in learning more about science. It was pretty memorable. We actually had a day where northern community people were allowed to come onto the boat and see what kind of like what life is like and what kind of samples we collect and everything. So that was definitely memorable.
Were there a lot of people where you were? Because I know that a lot of researchers, when they go to the Arctic, there's not really much of a civilization that lives there, but more of a researcher type civilization. There
are actually communities that live up there. They're not giant, they're pretty small, but there are definitely people who are not researchers who live up there. It's cool though, because I know some of my friends who have gotten these northern community people to help do science for them it's very expensive to go up there a lot, and it's isolated, so they'll have the locals do some of the research for them, collect samples and whatnot, especially during like winter and when it's not very good time to go up there.
Okay, thank you. This next question is directed to Jasmine. Has there been any point in time where your job or findings might have frightened you?
Yes. So I work with a critically endangered species. So unfortunately, I find a lot of frightening things with my data in terms of estimating their population sizes. And I look a lot at bycatch risk, which is bycatch is whenever something gets accidentally caught, whenever commercial fishermen are fishing for something else. For instance, if they're fishing for shrimp and they're dragging a big net and they accidentally get a sawfish in there. And so that is something that's really disappointing whenever I look at bycatch risk and I see how likely it is for certain fisheries to interact with these endangered species in certain areas. So that's upsetting in the like sad possible extinction type of way. In terms of like my field work is sometimes scary. So we're out on boats, and Emily and Amanda are in nice big research vessels. We're on like a 26-foot boat, much smaller. And so we have a lot of things that can go wrong and being caught in storms, and we don't have any cover or protection. And so we have to like race back to try and beat storms and things like that. I've also been in situations where we've pulled a shark on board and it bit our engine and took our engine out. So we had to drive back with one engine, which was fun. And by fun, I mean not fun at all. I've also witnessed someone get bit, not too bad, but on the hand. And that is unpleasant. It's not nice to see somebody get bit by a shark. So yeah, there's always an element of concern when we're out there for our safety in terms of the boat staying afloat and not getting caught in storms, but then also when handling the animals to make sure that we're not hurting them and that we're not putting ourselves at risk of getting bit, because I mean, we're pulling a shark out of the water. It can't breathe, it's very freaked out. And so I'm always aware of where the mouth is.
How do you prepare yourself for when you're going out in this field? And also, how do you manage the fear factor part of it?
So the way that we prepare is we check all of our safety equipment. So make sure our first aid kit is well stocked, make sure that engines and everything are running well, and that we've got life vests and all of those things. In terms of the handling, you just got to work at it and practice. So when I first started handling sharks, I was always at the tail end, the least likely end for you to get bit. They're very flexible, so they can still bite you on the tail, but you have a lot more warning. And so that's where I started out at, and just got used to how strong they are, what it feels like whenever they are flexing and about to, do something, and getting used to that. And then after I got comfortable with that, working up and being able to actually handle the head and things like that. So we definitely don't just like dive in and start handling a shark. You like work up to it, you watch someone do it, someone does it with you, and then you get to the point where you can work it up by yourself. So it's just a lot of practice and gaining confidence.
Okay, thank you. This question is directed towards Emily. What skills do your job require, and what did you do to attain those skills?
So I'm going to break this into two parts just because my job is split in the lab and at sea. So in the lab, the main skills that I need are taxonomic. And so I'm looking in a microscope at these very, very small or microscopic baby fish or larval fish. And so I need to be able to identify, not all of them, there's over 500 species that are present in the California current, and that's a lot of them. But because they're so small, the differences between them are also very small. So being able to focus long enough in a microscope and being able to count very small things, being able to notice or know when I need to look with white light or put like a dark background under it. It takes years of work to be able to do this. I know, funny story, when I first started, I wanted to show my boss that I was doing a really good job. And so we were catching, or I was getting a lot of larval rockfish in my sample. And because they were the most abundant, I was like, I'm going to show them that I know how to identify them. And we have keys and books with descriptions and drawings about how all the different characteristics between them. But what I didn't know was that larval rockfish are very, very difficult to be able to identify just by looking at them. So we're currently using genetics to be able to identify them, but I didn't know that. And so I was like, went to my boss and I was like, I think these are this fish and this is this fish. And he just like, before he even looked at him, he's like, I really doubt that you got them right because even I can't tell them apart. So just the constant practice of being able to look at a microscope and knowing, because that was pretty embarrassing for me when I first started out, being like, it's okay to be wrong. Like, you're not going to get it every time. So just the constant looking and being able to like focus your vision to look at things very small. And then going out to sea, also just a lot of practice and being able to, as Jasmine was saying, you start off by watching and then you start off by being helped and then like working your way up to leading a watch and being able to call the shots and be like, we need to go this speed in the water. The weather might be too rough and being able to be like, I don't think it's safe for us to do our operations. Or if you've done it enough and the weather's not that bad, be like, okay, we can do it. So practice and confidence, I think, are the skills. And it does take time to get to get up to that point for any job.
Okay, thank you. And the rest of the questions are going to be directed towards all the panelists for those who want to answer and for those who want to add on to their peers. While studying this field, what have you found to be one of the most challenging and most rewarding things?
I can answer. So one of the most rewarding things in my experience is just getting more people excited about marine science. I think a lot of people are removed from it, especially in the city. I mean, I'm lucky that I was able to go fishing a lot, but I don't think a lot of people have that ability, especially with how toxic our waterways are. I mean, no one really wants to go swimming in the Hudson River. So working at the New York Aquarium and, showing kids and their families, I mean, older people too get excited, showing them new shark exhibits and, explaining how important it is to, think about our wildlife and our environment every day and getting them excited about it. I think that's something that I find really rewarding because I can share my passion with people who, might not think about it every day. So that's what I like.
Thank you. How can we advance this field and what steps should individuals, educational institutions, organizations, and companies take to make it more inclusive and more diverse? What should be happening now, but it's not?
I think doing events like this is why I love doing outreach events for middle school, high school, and sometimes elementary school students in all sorts of backgrounds in all areas, at least of San Diego where I live, and being able to reach everybody who wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to come to a lab and see what we do, or to like tour a ship and be like, whoa, this is where you live for 3 weeks at a time. Like, this is crazy. I think it's slowly getting better, but it's not where it needs to be by any means. But I think the first step is making sure everybody has the same information and tools available for them. And I know, at least at NOAA, some of our organizations, and we partner with different schools in low income areas and make sure that they get more of an opportunity to come to our lab and we can explain to them. And I find that they're more excited than a lot of other schools to learn about this, and they get more involved and more excited about wanting to help the ocean. And they plan and want to organize beach cleanups more so. And I think that's really great. Just trying to get everybody, no matter what they look like, where they live, how much money they have or don't have, to learn about everything that is a possibility for them.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to add on?
Yeah, I'll add on. I think something that's really important is access. Marine science has a lot of financial barriers associated with it, a lot of unpaid internship opportunities, or things where you have to work for free, or pay money to go work on somebody's boat or things like that, and that makes it really hard for people that don't have a lot of money to get involved. So I think something that can be really helpful is having more funding opportunities for people that can't do unpaid internships and things like that is really important as well.
I think maybe having a collated list of all the funding opportunities, because I mean, I found some for like my undergrad, so my last 2 years were fully funded. But it was hard to find, like you'd have to search through emails and email people to figure out like connections on how they got money. So I feel like if we had a better way of putting all the funding opportunities together, could be helpful.
Okay, thank you. What are some ways people from this field are making a difference in this world?
I think we're taking big steps for understanding how the ocean is going to change with climate change and as we add more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So I think we are understanding what's going on, or trying to understand better what's going on, and predicting what's going to happen in the future is, I think, really important.
Okay, thank you. What would you like people to know about marine sciences?
I can answer this. Something that I think everyone should know. Okay, let me start. So, as a kid, I would say I want to be a marine biologist, and I don't really think I understood what that meant. And for me, that meant being close to the ocean, being involved with wildlife and things like that. And when I got to harbor school and Mauricio showed me, I mean, so many different aspects of marine science and what that means. And then going to college and seeing how many aspects of marine science, environmental science, marine biology, aquaculture, there's so many different parts to marine science that you can really find one that, speaks to you. And I think that's what's important. I mean, keeping your options open, you don't just have to narrow it in and say marine biology. You can say, okay, I want to do marine biology and marine science, but then what part of that? And there's so many different options out there. Whether you're looking at it yourself on indeed.com and just seeing what jobs are out there, or even just what I've done, and I just spoke to professors and said, where can I be of assistance, and they've opened up opportunities. So just keep your options open and seeing what speaks to you and what your skill set is. I think that's what's most important and can help you be successful.
Would anyone else like to answer this question?
Sure. I originally wanted to work with dolphins, which I think a lot of people started off at because I went to the aquarium and I would see dolphins and they're very friendly and I really liked that. And now I tried, which I didn't even pursue, but it did get me interested more in marine sciences. And so from there, I tried a bunch of other things. I tried looking at coastal erosion, so how the beach is eroding and is disappearing and what causes that. And I decided I didn't like that very much because I didn't want to work at a computer all the time. So I definitely tried a lot of different things before I figured out what I really enjoy. And that's basically just doing internships, or like Jasmine was saying, that you email professors and say, hey, I'm interested in what you're doing. That's how I got a job as an undergrad working in the lab. So I actually got paid not much, but still it also gave me experience and figuring out what I liked to do. So I would say try a lot of things before you pick something that you want to do.
I also have something to add. So as everyone was just saying, it's a very diverse field, and to like try different things, even if you don't think you're going to like it. But there are a lot of technological advances that are coming. So if you're not necessarily interested in like the biology of it, or wanting to go out in the field, there's a lot of like engineering jobs, and like a lot of, especially for the mammal work, they go out with low flying planes, and they'll take video and capture pictures. And before, the technology available to mount a very heavy camera to the bottom of a plane and being able to take a finite number of photos, but because of the technology, we're able to do digital videos over large swaths of the ocean. So just being able to develop new technologies for better cameras or better equipment, like you might not be going out into the ocean, but you're still helping. So you don't have to want to get wet to be a marine biologist. You can still do other things that will help if you're interested.
Any last add-ons?
Yes, I will add on. So this is a fun fact that I like to share with people, because sometimes people are like, I can't do marine science because I get seasick. So do I. Yeah, I get seasick, and I still do marine science. There's a reason I study mostly coastal species, so that I don't have to go into the deep sea and spend most of my time throwing up. But yes, Dramamine is my friend. You do not have to be this like person that, you know, never gets seasick to be able to do marine science. If you think it's worth it, then you can find ways around it. Like Emily said, you don't even have to get on the water at all. Or you can study things that you can wade into the water, or be really close to shore and not have to get in big waves and things like that. So that's something that people hopefully realize, and you don't necessarily have to be able to swim, because you don't have to necessarily go into the ocean. You can do lab work. So it's really a super fun field to get into, and there's a lot of things that people think that you have to be able to do to be a marine scientist, but marine science is so diverse in terms of different things that you can study, that there's not any skills that you can be limited by. So if you can't swim or can't dive, I can't scuba dive because I have this weird inner ear thing where I don't pressurize things well. But yeah, so I'm seasick and incapable of scuba diving, and I still do marine science. And so there's a way around personal limitations that you have.
Okay, thank you. We're wrapping up the discussion section of this conversation. So the last question I'm going to ask is, how can kids learn more about these opportunities?
I would say start making contacts now. I think this is a good opportunity. I don't know if we're going to be posting our emails. I can share mine in the chat, but I think it was Jasmine, I can't remember, but somebody said just emailing people. And I think that is a great way. Unfortunately, that's how it is right now, and one of the changes that we need to be making. If you're interested and you talked, especially if you're younger and you talk to professional scientists or those like going out in the field or doing various things, most people are going to be excited and wanting to share the information with you, because especially if you care and you want to help, I would say trying to make as many professional contacts, even if you don't think it'll be useful to you, because you don't know who they might know and you don't know what opportunities might arise.
Would anyone else like to add on?
I'd like to. So also this pertains to a question someone asked in the chat about internships available at Harbor School as a sophomore. And I'd like to say that for the marine biology research program, Mauricio really, he supports us in every way, and he is a great resource in himself. And he also has a lot of networking abilities, and he exposes us as students to that. So from our sophomore year, we have to develop a science project, which mine was the baseline study, and he helps us, but mainly it's just us organizing all of this. And so we also have to have a mentor. So he helps set us up with a mentor in our field who may be studying something similar and can add advice to our projects. And I've kept that mentor actually. I met her my sophomore year of Harbor School, and now in college, working on a completely different internship with completely different people. She's actually back in my circle. So, you know, these networks that you make when you're 15 as a sophomore in high school, when you feel like you can't really do anything, they carry with you for a long time. I mean, I'm about to graduate and I still might be networking with those same people. As Emily said, you know, emailing and just asking around of who's available, and you know, making those connections and having those relationships last can be really key in building your career going forward. So Mauricio really sets us up for that, starting day one, going into the marine biology research program, and up until graduation and into college. So yeah, I mean, there's internships available as a sophomore, junior year, senior year, and those networks can really help carry you and help you build your resume later on, even after graduation.
Okay, thank you. And for our last follow-up question, what is one piece of practical advice you can give to students interested in becoming a marine biologist?
I can answer. I would just say that a piece of practical advice is cater to your strengths. Something I learned in college is when I came in as a freshman to Stony Brook, I was a marine vertebrate biology major, you know, leaving the marine bio research program. And when I got to college and, you know, I was going through different classes and you know, discovering what I liked and didn't like, you know, I changed my major around a little bit too, and catered what I was learning to what my interests were. So I would say a practical piece of advice would just be, you know, knowing yourself and feeling, you know, what's right, what's not, and really honing in on that to shape your career. You know, as Jasmine said, you don't have to be, you know, on a boat. You don't have to be scuba diving. There's so many different assets that you can focus on in marine science. So, you know, make it good for you, and you know, make your career your own. You don't have to, you know, follow whatever stereotypical thing you think is happening. You know, you can be good at writing and just write research papers. You can be good at presenting and go present research. You can be good at collecting data. There's so many different things that you can do. So just think about yourself and your own strengths.
All right, thank you. Now we are going to go into the question and answering of this portion of the discussion. So that means if any one of the students or people watching this have any questions, please type them in the Q&A section of the screen. We are going to start off with, is being a marine biologist the same thing as being a marine? I'm sorry, I think there was a typo. So I'm going to go to the next question. Are any of you going to Hawaii for research?
I did my undergrad and my master's at the University of Hawaii. So I lived in Hawaii for over 6 years and I loved it there. I would say sometimes people have trouble focusing because there's warm water and surfing right there. It's also very isolated. So if you want to go anywhere other than Hawaii, it's at least a 5-hour flight from Hawaii to California, and then wherever you want to fly from there. There are, I know, a lot of jobs being posted for like environmental science positions in Hawaii. So there are definitely opportunities there if anyone wanted to go there.
Okay, thank you. Now I figured out the typo. Is being a marine biologist the same thing as being a marine scientist?
I would say that marine biologist is a type of marine scientist. There are lots of different fields, like we didn't even talk about it, but there's also modeling. People can do computer programming type stuff. to understand what's going on. So instead of going out and sampling, they can make models to try to understand what's going on from the computer side. So there's lots of, or you could do physical oceanography, which sometimes you don't even need to go into the field. So there's lots of different things that don't have to do specifically with biology, but can do like with physics. Like some people look at waves or other physical processes that aren't related to biology, but do affect biology, I guess.
All right, thank you.
Can I add on to that? I'm sorry.
Yes, of course, of course.
So for the marine biology research program, I mean, it's in the name, biology, but something that Mauricio, I think, is really great at is exposing us to a lot of different sides of marine science. So Amanda just said that, you know, you can do computer programming, and that's something that the marine biology research program also exposes students to. I know Mauricio teaches GIS to some students. You know, we also took an oceanography course, which was offered by Stony Brook, but he taught it to his seniors when I was there. I think he may have added another class. So he exposes us to a lot of different aspects of marine science and conducting different kinds of science. Even though the program is named marine biology, you can do so much in his program, and it really sets you up for the future. I mean, like I said, so many skills I learned there, I'm still carrying with me. So yeah, I think that was really important to add.
I have something to add as well. Going off of what everyone just said, like even when you're a PhD and even if you focus on biology, but you want to know maybe why this invertebrate is now moving to a different area of the ocean, you might need to talk to a physical oceanographer to see if there's anything changing physically in the ocean, like chemically, if it's getting warmer, colder, more salty, less salty, if there's more oxygen. Or you might just need to talk to a statistician to make sure you're doing the right statistical analysis for your work. I know for me that's really challenging, so I know that's something that I always reach out to somebody else for. Just working together to try to get the best information available. I think what everyone does in life, if you don't know how to do something, then you're going to ask a friend, or you're going to go onto like an internet chat to figure out how you're doing it. Biology is just one small aspect of marine science.
Okay, would anyone else like to add on? All right, so our next question is, which Melanie did touch on for our first question for the discussion. Why did you choose marine biology?
I guess I really thought I wanted to do like I said, dolphins, but I also I don't know if it was from watching environmental movies, but I also am interested in environmental stuff. So I think from a young age, I knew I wanted to do something in science-y related. But it wasn't until I was older that I figured out exactly what I wanted to look at, which are phytoplankton, because they're cool. They actually supply about half of our oxygen in the atmosphere. So if you like breathing, you can thank the plants and plant-like organisms in the ocean.
All right, thank you. Would anyone else like to add on?
I think this is similar to what everyone else has said, but just the fascination of the ocean, like what's in there, and just my general curiosity, be like, why is that there, but it's not over there? Like if I went on vacation to an ocean, but then went to a different area a couple years later, I didn't see the same things, and I wanted to know why. But in like my interest changed over time, but it always stayed in the ocean. Like we as humans can't breathe underwater unless it's aided by scuba gear or something like that. But it was just a mystical fascination to me that didn't make sense, and I wanted to try to figure out how and why they lived the way that they lived. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. This question asks, what can I do to make my college application stand out? I want to go to Stony Brook.
So I think what made my application to Stony Brook stand out was definitely my internship with the Marine Biology Research Program. So I served as a scientific consultant for Civitas, which is this nonprofit organization, and they were the ones who really wanted the river to be investigated. So I think to stand out, definitely, I would say, get something that, be interested in something or contribute to something that isn't really on other people's resumes or extracurriculars. I mean, I was never like a sports person, but I feel like a lot of people put like sports as a recreation extracurricular. But if you do want to stand out, I would say the Marine Biology Research Program really sets you up for that. I mean, the 3-year project, and he prepares us to go to NYSIF, which is the New York City Science and Engineering Fair. So every senior in the Marine Biology Research Program has to submit a project to that fair, and if accepted, we have to present at it. So that's always like a fun day that everyone gets to present and see where we've come. And I think that, even if you don't go to Harbor School, the New York City Science and Engineering Fair is open for all New York City high school students. I know that other schools, Midwood, Murrow, Brooklyn Tech, Stuyvesant, they all, I think, have students that definitely go present there. And so if you're interested in science, and that's something that you want to pursue at Stony Brook, I think definitely looking into the New York City Science and Engineering Fair would be a good step. Whether or not it is whatever you're doing, I think finding a project to present there or somewhere similar, to showcase what you've done would really be a great step in doing that. Or finding an internship, something similar like that.
Would anyone else like to add on? Alrighty, thank you. And for our last question, we have, is owning a pet octopus legal?
I think it depends on the octopus. I know some people that have them, but they're not good pets. They are escape artists. They're really good at escaping. They can get through small spaces as big as their beak. So they're like the mouth, and that's the only hard part of an octopus. So even if you think they can't get out, they're most likely going to find a way to get out. And if there's not water readily available, I know a lot of times that octopus will dry out and they won't survive because they're trying to escape. So I agree, cephalopods are my favorite creatures. I did an undergraduate project on cuttlefish because I think they're the best. But they are a lot of work. You can't leave to go on vacation when you're taking care of them. They need like constant monitoring. So I understand you wanting one, but I don't think it's a good idea for most people.
All right, thank you. And as we wrap up, I'm going to resign and give the mic back to Rubina.
Thank you so much, Avery. And thank you to each and every one of our panelists. There's still some questions coming in. Please feel free to send your questions to educate@NY Harbor, and we will connect you to our panelists. So send it to educate@nyharbor.org. Thank you once again, and please take the time to submit our NSF survey. The link, Mike will drop the link once again to the chat, and it's also on our Eventbrite page. So everyone have a good day, and thank you.